about Pixie ever again. Never said a word. And these, I'm sure, are the same household spirits that the ancient Romans had small little shrines for and things like that. So we leave little offerings for Pixie, and we try to be very polite to her.
Well, I want to let you know that was like the coolest opening for the first episode of the third thing that I could have ever freaking come up with, dude. Thank you so much for that. That was amazing.
Actually, I need to have a word with that Pixie.
That was cool.
I somewhere in this room, months ago, I lost my Chrome Zippo. And a couple weeks ago, I lost a set of fountain pen and a couple other things, all in a leather sleeve.
You're so retro, man. Fountain pens, Zippo lighters.
Yeah, he is.
That suit, you know. I mean, come on.
He's freaking hardcore as hell.
Actually, yesterday, I was just browsing something, and I was thinking fedora hat.
Yeah, right. Not even, dude. Whatever.
Chips is fedora. You can do it literally.
I mentioned that he should wear a bow tie one time, dude. And he's like, "Oh no, that's too conservative." I'm like,
no.
Oh no, it's too
bow tie guy.
Too progressive is what he said. He said it was too progressive, not conservative.
Well, the thing with a bow tie is, if you have a beard, I don't think a bow tie is as effective. As a person that wears a full beard myself, I don't think I would wear a bow tie, simply for the beard factor.
Yeah,
I don't know. I can think of a few people that actually an historian, Indian English historian, Indian
Anglo-Indian
British historian that wears a belt, has got the face, has got the
full beard.
Yeah, he's got a beard, and he always wears a bow tie.
Really? Huh. Well, you know, everybody's different, and everybody carries off their own look, you know, what you're comfortable with. I haven't worn a tie in many years. I did for a while. I had a job where I took great delight in wearing suits and ties. I went through a phase in college, actually. I would wear three-piece suits and ties. And my hair is still like this, of course. And I should get a tuxedo, though. I don't have a tux. They say every man should own a tuxedo.
Yeah, I haven't. Yeah. But then
do you have
again,
a tux?
No. When do you use it?
That's the thing.
How often do you get invited out to dinner? Those ultra formal dinner parties.
I've had to wear a tuxedo twice in my life. Both were wedding ceremonies. One, I was the best man, and I had to wear a tux to match everybody else's tuxedos. So they sent us to a rental shop, and it was like a chorus line for Busby Berkeley movie or something. And then I attended a friend of mine's wedding, and I decided that I was going to surprise everyone because I generally dress pretty scubby, you know, old hippie kind of guy, and t-shirt and jeans all the time. So I didn't tell anyone, but I went to a tux rental place, and I said, I want a vanilla ice cream tuxedo. And I got a pure white tuxedo from tops to tails, and nobody was expecting this of me.
Yeah.
And I got to the wedding, and I got out of my car, and one of my friends was, and everybody had like suits and stuff on. I got out of the car, and my friend looked at me, this guy across the park, and he just started roaring with laughter. And I was later told that the groom told me I was dressed better than the groom. The groom had a tux too, but not like mine. Pure white. I actually have a photograph somewhere. A buddy of mine had a photography studio, and I remember I tried it on the day before, and he said, I got to take your picture. So he took a picture of me in this tux, and he printed one out for me, so I gave it to my wife, and she put it in this really magnificent frame, and hung it up in her office when she used to be the office manager over here at the art museum down here. And people would say, "Who is that? Who is that?" You know, I look like some kind of a celebrity or something. Well, that's my husband. And they're like, "What does he do?" It's like, well, as little as possible. But if I can get I should get a picture of the picture and like post it sometime. Let's see if I can find that.
That must be hell to clean. I know.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. I wouldn't want to own it, and I took out the insurance. It was like $5 against stains and stuff. But it was actually kind of uncomfortable too because the whole thing was like nylon or whatever.
My two grey blazers that I tend to wear. I spend tons of money on dry cleaning them because, again, that's sort of those shades of grey get stained or get messy quite quickly.
Right. Yeah. 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 White is tough.
I talked to Mr. Robot. He said he's got some paperwork that he has to sign, and he'll be back in 15 minutes. So he might be able to come in.
Paperwork.
He's in school for cybersecurity, I believe it is. He said he.
What happens when they find out he's talking to us? There goes his clearance. Down the tubes.
But he said he should be here in 15 minutes. I also sent message to Naroki saying that we decided to do the third thing tonight. Go ahead and do an episode of it because we got time.
What is it we're doing an episode of here now? This is an episode right now, right?
Yeah, this is the third thing. This is the new episode, or the first episode for the third thing. And think of it as kind of what we talk about, but we're more opened up where we can freaking talk about everything. You know what I'm saying? Like when it comes to
he can talk about his sex life.
Well, that goes on the headlines after midnight. All of his
the soft porn channel that you've got going.
Yeah. But like
letters to Playboy Advisor or something. Well, I was delivering pizza one day when the woman said, "I didn't have money to pay you," but
hey, dude, those are the best ones though. Like Pizza Delivery Boy, I'm going to tell you right now, those are the best porn videos. Like
maybe that's what we should do. A sort of Anthony Ask sort of thing. You know, ask Auntie new sex problems.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of views.
Well, I mean, like with this one, it's just kind of like you know how we were talking about duality, and whenever I was talking to you, and then about the third element things. Well,
yeah,
kind of like some of the things that were brought up in the conversations too. Like I notice whenever you bring up triality, for example, and
right.
everybody's all cool to talk about it until you mention the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then, all of a sudden it turns into religion and they just start spilling off all this shit. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. They're afraid of some of the metaphors. Yeah. They're afraid of the language. I had to get past that myself, you know?
Yeah. Well,
once you do, it opens up a lot, though.
Yeah. Mr. Robot is here. I can hear his weird voice in the background.
The robotic kind of
Hey, you guys going?
It's going.
Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto.
Mr. Roboto.
I was going to ask you, actually. You doing all this cybersecurity courses. Have you not touched on various sort of DNS sort of things like network?
Is that a veiled insult, Mark?
Yes.
No. There's a question. Yes. There's a question.
Well, he's English, so
because
there's a difference between doing theory on a subject and learning how to set up a matrix server.
Okay.
I haven't set up a dynamic DNS in a while.
Well, he is English, so there's a good chance that he was being.
No. I was just thinking that
he does that to me all the time.
I learned these sort of things from a very, very.
No, that's more web development. It's not really cybersecurity. We learned how to configure a firewall.
It's network infrastructure, and obviously cybersecurity is all about infrastructure, isn't it? Is it not?
Not necessarily. Ours is more about software configuration mainly. We didn't do a lot of infrastructure stuff.
Now, infrastructure, that's the thing that I was talking to you on Tech Talk whenever we were having that discussion about some of the technology that I think a lot of these companies should be putting in to kind of monitor the kind of things going on with their computers, you know what I'm saying? But they don't. Or was it? It was that company that got freaking hacked, and they stole all their data, and these people had nothing, and they were in charge of selling for all the documentation for the car dealers and stuff.
That's not really related to network infrastructure per se. That's more related to security, more related to cybersecurity.
That's what I was getting at. I mean, they need to put more security into infrastructure. I mean, that would be a really smart thing to do.
Or more monitoring.
Well, it all depends. Like, you could have all the infrastructure in the world. If your security has a loophole, someone can exploit it and do what they did to that company or worse. Like, you know, it even happens to like major telecommunications companies. Over here, we had one hacked, and like, 20 million people's worth of private information got leaked online and shit like that. So,
but surely you understand that when it comes to network security, it's all about having a sort of onion sort of concept. I.e., you have a firewall, and then maybe a separate firewall behind that, depending on subnets and various other things, and then it's a piecemeal thing.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. It's also about what you have access to control. If you only have access to your like local firewall and stuff like that, like I can't configure my router, for example, so I just have to focus on my own personal laptop security. But yeah, basically you got to just implement, gold standard security on every different layer of the network, and hope for the best. You don't get hit by
security. I mean, I've still got a old security card from an insurance company that I worked for 23, 24, 25 years ago, that would allow me to get into, or at the time, server rooms. And
now,
restrictions.
Mr. Robot, have you met Otto yet?
Otto rings a bell.
Otto Excelsior.
Hello, Otto here.
Hello,
Mr.
Has
Robot.
Otto got his own podcast as well?
We may run into each other here or there. I meet so many people, and then months pass, and I have trouble remembering what I did last week. That's what I did 5 months ago.
Well, I'll say hello and nice to meet you again. Just in case.
Now, let me let you know this ahead of time. You met V. He is one of my worst case scenarios, and then after that we have Mr. Robot. Mr. Robot takes over where V freaking leaves off. Okay.
Well, he behaved himself pretty well when Mike and Bob showed up.
Yeah, he did. He did really good. And he said that he's going to be late. Apparently, what he ate gave him the diarrhea. So.
Wow.
Okay.
Can't do much about that, but. And I think he responded very well because, and I said we're going to go by Mike and Bob rules now.
Mm-hmm.
This is the old quantum gathering.
Exactly.
And he fell right into the place, and I think he did quite well.
No,
I was impressed.
I was actually impressed.
Mr. Robot can do it.
Now Bob Dub left us a message too. She said, "So cool. Looking forward to reading that. I promise, very intrigued." Oh wait, hold up. That's the wrong one. She just sent a message, and I believe it was on the quantum gathering, but she said that so cool. Looking forward to reading that. It's promising to be very intriguing, guys. It was so great seeing you again. And then she said, I am looking forward to seeing you all again next week. So cool. She's going to be there with us next week.
First time I've spoken to her in ages. I noticed that she keeps on liking my sort of Mind's music selection content.
It felt so good having her on Quantum Gathering tonight, dude. Like when she was doing the narration, it was just like freaking listening to freaking something that was smooth as butter, you know what I mean? It was great. I thought it was awesome. You remember Bob Dub, don't you, Mr. Robot?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the
She's
first
cool.
time we were all talking to her and she gave that speech and everybody just went silent. Nobody could even freaking talk, dude, for like a straight minute. It was like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but everybody
Nah,
just
I
went
don't.
silent. It's pretty
Must have been a while ago.
Well, it was back whenever we were all starting out. Karma Love was still with us. So,
Yeah.
this,
So what's our topic for today?
well, this is going to be an interesting one. This is where we kind of mix and blend science with current events, also with metaphysics, you could say, as well as like folklore, ancient history, all of it blended together. Now, I've already been able to go through with B, with some of the topics, and I ran through it with Otto on some of the stuff that I went. But since I got you and Mark back on here, maybe this would be, or an Otto, I mean, back on here, maybe we can
Hey, B. You see it too.
we can get a good conversation coming out of what we were discussing before, because this is kind of cool, to be honest, and it has to do with duality. That's basically that's the foundation where we start off, is duality. And I remember having this conversation with you before, but do you know what the difference between duality and dualism is?
I'm not off the top of my head. Isn't dualism some kind of philosophy? Whereas like duality is more of like a some kind of concept of metaphysics, or just even just reality. Like duality can be applied to anything, really. Like it's more of a general term, I'd say.
Well, with duality, from what I've learned, is like it's two opposing or complementary forces, and they both define each other. They're not in conflict with one another. And then dualism is two opposing forces that are in conflict with one another. Now, like,
I'm looking it up. I'm fact checking you.
yeah, I know he's a fact checker. But
It says here, well, the term can be applied to philosophy or psychology, or just there's the common term, which is the condition of being double, duality. So it's just another word for duality in one sense. But the view in philosophy, it's the view that the world consists of or is explicable as two fundamental entities, such as mind and matter. In psychology, it is the view that the mind and body function separately without interchange. Oh my God, you ask anyone, it's a different bloody meaning.
well, in religion and philosophy, you can also use yin and yang as the same thing when it comes to that. And then, like in physics, it'd be like particle and wave. And for psychology, I've used it before when I was talking to these guys, where like the best way of doing it is conscious and unconscious. You know, that's really the best way to do it when it's describing duality.
It's black,
Here's,
it's white. Yeah. Doesn't matter if it's black. Doesn't matter if it's white.
But-
no one's gonna stop me.
But is it duality or dualism? Because like freaking
The
it
thing
can't.
is, I was kind of right. So, like, duality just means being twofold, a classification into two opposed parts or subclasses. So I said, like, it's a general term. It can be applied in almost any field, but physics and geometry, it's often applied. the property of in physics, it's the property of matter and electromagnetic radiation that is characterized by the fact that some properties can be explained best by wave theory and others by particle theory. It's kind of wishy-washy. If you
Wavical, yeah.
Mhm.
I think maybe we should look at duality as a model, because of course we cannot sense reality directly. Everything in Buddhism, we're taught the mind comes first, the mind is the forerunner of all. So anytime you have any kind of sense impression, it's basically these electromagnetic waves hitting your sensoria, your eyes and ears and so forth. And we model these things, and we have implicit in our structure, it's intrinsic to us, we have a sense of proportion and a sense of duality and symmetry. We want things to be symmetrical. They've shown that babies are more attracted to a symmetrical face. We find symmetrical things more beautiful. So
that's more dualism. That's more dualism because you're using the principle of duality to explain your worldview of that, right? So when it's a view, when it's a belief, then it is more dualism. Whereas if duality is more fundamental, it's just literally a classification system or being twofold, right?
Yeah.
So when you then use duality to explain something, then it starts to get into the area of dualism, apparently.
Now with dualism, what I pulled from it was like, with dualism, it's basically two forces that are locked in conflict. They oppose each other as enemies, and they're not partners. And then the goal is basically victory, division, or separation, whichever way you want to say it. One side is framed as good, and the other is as bad. Good examples would be, good versus evil, or spirit versus matter, which me and B both discussed and said that Jiva even said it, I believe, where we don't see a difference between, spirit versus matter, or, mind versus body, which is Cartesian dualism. That's a whole different thing right there.
Okay.
So when you're talking about spirit versus matter, that's classic metaphysical dualism.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily have to be locked into conflict. That's one view of dualism, but there's many different views of dualism. It spans across many domains and principles, to quote Wikipedia.
Well, light versus darkness, that's a moral opposites. That's basically what's being used too. And then you get good versus evil. That's
Yin yang, yeah.
You have the moral philosophy or theology, however you want to call it. So you've got a lot going on there when it comes to that, and it basically opposites that create tension, but they also create structure too. That's the one thing I did notice. Even though it does cause conflict and tension, it also creates structure as well.
Only in our minds, though, I would argue, because existence is what it is. It's not necessarily that there is or isn't structure. It's just how we see it or classify it is what we then believe is structure, because we think that, our mind and our body are separate things based on this classification system. But I would say on a more fundamental level, there isn't really a separation between the two. We just create an artificial classification so that there is. Does that make sense? Just there's no difference between matter and everything around it. It's a spectrum of existence. It's not so much a defined border.
That is the basis for identification, to be able to identify something. You have you're not going to be able to know what dark is unless you've experienced light, and vice versa.
And here's the deeper part of that is, if what I say is true, there is no real separation between things. It's more of a classification system that creates that. Then our identification with what we think we are is kind of illusory. It's not true necessarily. it's just another classification system that we've come up with, that our egos have come up with as we sort of navigate.
And you have these perceptions and perceptions of reality, and you multiply that by other people's perception, and it sort of builds on reality.
Well, that kind of works. That kind of works. So, but you guys have to remember that dualism, it also prevents integration, and it keeps like systems locked in a fight. You know what I mean?
Knew that was going to happen in there.
Does that make sense? Did you hear that?
Back stable.
What do you mean by locked in a fight? You keep saying that. I don't
know. Dualism actually prevents integration, where things can integrate with each other, and it keeps the system locked in continuous freaking conflict, a continuous fight. Okay, you see that?
Well, how is light and dark fighting each other? Explain that to me.
I was about to ask that.
Does one have a sword and one have a stick, or like, how they fight each other?
It's in moral philosophy and theology. You see it all the time.
Well, it's like oil and water.
You see it in Star Wars, dude. The dark side.
But they're not fighting.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. They're in constant.
I'm talking about light, like actual light, like the sun, and darkness, like in a box. Like, how are they fighting each other?
You got to be more open-minded than that. It's not just about freaking the physical, scientific approach. It's also
but it has to include that as well, right? You can't say it's not part of it.
Well, dualism and duality.
You need to be more open-minded in your definition
not really.
of it. Why does it always have to be locked in conflict? I don't think that's necessarily.
It doesn't have to, but it can be. Light and darkness is duality too, because there is light and there is day. You know what I mean? You have, and neither one of them are in conflict with one another. That's duality. A dualism.
And here's the opposing view to that is a concept called monism, which basically is the opposing view of duality, that there is no separation between night and day. There, in reality, it's like we're in space, and what we call night is just a shadow of the earth, right? And it's day all the time because the sun never sleeps. So my point is, when you take a step back and rise above that concept, there is like a oneness to it all, you know. But anyway, we'll get there.
Well, see, I think the direction was going to triality, the third thing, not the theory.
Well, this is actually important to discuss. I mean, because a lot of people. I mean, I've been talking to you guys about it, like, and there's so many different interpretations of what duality is, and like, I think it's important for people to understand there is a difference between duality and dualism, because if you don't understand the difference, then you're not going to understand what triality is, okay? I was mentioning the fact that the moment you start talking about triality to people, they're curious about it, but the moment you mention the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, bam, everybody freaking is, all of a sudden their attitudes change. Because now all of a sudden it's about religion, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, underneath the triune God.
Triality is cool.
And also, I would like, if we accept the definition that duality is a principle, or a classification system, whereas dualism is using that classification system to explain views on reality. When you're dealing with, if we accept that, dualism is like then touching on people's beliefs and how people explain reality, and that's why people can get, you know, more animated in their conversation when dealing with like how they interpret things and how their own belief structures. You know,
it simplifies things a great deal too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
I'm on this side, they're on that side. Yes,
yeah.
no.
That's right.
We exclude the middle, and it simplifies
right?
things. You know, simplifying things is a wonderful technique for navigating life sometimes.
Yeah, but people get trapped in thinking it's real, like thinking it's true. You know?
You know, there are levels of reality. You know, there's there's a wonderful book called How Real is Real, written by a guy whose name I can never pronounce, Paul Watzlawick, or something like that. And it's basically about the social construction of reality. And it's more of a popular book. He also wrote a more scholarly tome called The Social Construction of Reality. And reality, a lot of the reality that we have is simply, as you point out, it's not real, quote unquote, but just because something isn't real doesn't mean it doesn't have existence. Mm-hmm. And when we navigate in Buddhism, we talk about samsara, which literally means wandering around, and just all the day-to-day stuff you do. You go to work, you put gasoline in the car, you make sure that the taxes are paid on your house or whatever. And you have to take all that seriously on a certain level in order to navigate through life. But yeah, the next step up is realizing that it is all just a socially constructed thing, and being able to rise above it, but at the same time maintain it so that you can function within the world. This is something I call sometimes skillful samsara, which I intend to do a series of talks on. But so yeah, there are levels of reality, and we can function in this socially constructed reality quite well from cradle to grave without ever having to disturb our higher centers or have any higher realizations. But maybe that's where triality comes in.
Now, just to add to that, while you mentioned samsara, which is like the endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth.
That's one of those aspects, yeah.
And but the Buddha also said something along the lines of it's perpetuated by ignorance or karma, which is driven by ignorance, desire, and that causes suffering, and then that causes the karma that causes the rebirth, right? And one part of that is it's kind of like a trap when you focus on the what do you call it, the physical world too much. You create a lot of suffering for yourself, and therefore you have to repeat the course of life over and over again. And so
now see, I wanted to ask some questions.
That's why I like the concept of monism, because it gets rid of that judgment of like good and evil and victim and perpetrator. Whoa. And it rises above it and goes, I am the creator and the experiencer of my own reality, and therefore there's no one to blame.
Well, see, I get confused about you guys when you talk about this, because like I've been learning about samsara, and I've learned that it's actually 6 planes of existence. Okay, now, like when you hear about the hungry ghost, that would be freaking like Praetus. Okay, and that's where the hungry ghosts come from. Now you have the gods and the demigods. That's a source. Humans, animals, and hungry gods or hungry ghosts are all part of Praetus and stuff like that. And then you have the hells, the Narakas.
Right.
Okay. Now
in that classification, I would say they're all still considered life. Like they're all still reincarnations. Like there's just different realms of existence.
As a hell being, you take existence as a divine being, but whatever has a beginning has an ending.
And they're all driven by karma, which is actions basically, and emotions like greed and anger and ignorance.
Karma is actually a mental state. Technically, it means intention, but it also means action. We have to remember our mental states are also actions. A thought is an action. In Buddhism, you have 6 senses, including the mind is considered a sense because we perceive so much through our minds.
So, like, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor.
Well, that, yeah.
That is actually considered to be, you're actually committing a sin by thinking about it.
You don't have sin so much as, one way I like to put it, and one good translation is, you can do things that are either skillful or unskillful.
Right.
And skillful things will lead to happiness, and unskillful things will lead to unhappiness. So things like anger or desire, these sorts of things are unskillful, and if we indulge in them, the results are not going to be good. We might not see the results immediately, but every action we take, the center of Buddhism has to do with karma, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And karma is power. You have this immense power. Every action you take has immense power. You actually have control. What's gone before you can't change. It's like the blockchain. It's already built into you. But in the moment, you have complete freedom to make a skillful choice. And that means that you also have the choice of how to cope with your past karma as well. The usual, and you guys that have read Buddhism are probably familiar with the metaphor of karma is like seeds. You scatter these seeds, and you can nurture some seeds, and you can not nurture others. So it's up to us whether we're going to experience the suffering from our past karma. That's completely within our control, and we don't like this power. We don't like to think that, it doesn't matter if I have another drink. It does. Yeah. Everything you do has immense potential.
Well,
and people shy away from that.
But that's not the end all of knowledge and the human experience.
Well, it depends on what knowledge you want. And we were talking before about that. Buddhism doesn't say you should do these things, but if you want to do this thing, then these are the steps that the Buddha describes. And he always says, give it a try. Don't take my word for it. Do the practice and see what happens. And that was the thing that I liked about Buddhism, was it was like, not take this on faith, but I'm going to give you some instructions, give it a try, see what happens. And I've seen a constant improvement in things.
Okay, well, I want to roll this back, though. So let's omit the word sin. You've committed action in your head, the adultery, just by thinking about it. Is that so? But that's just thinking about it. And thinking about it is the first step of manifestation. Thinking it becomes before actions.
Right, and that's more of a Christian look at it. And like when it comes to the seed metaphor, you can see that in a lot of the Christian beliefs, because they have a saying where it talks about where you grow your soul. What kind of soil do you want to grow your seed in, or where you build your foundation on solid ground. You'll hear a lot of these metaphors that's talking about what he's saying right there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like according to a lot of beliefs, what's his face? Oh my God, not Cain. Cain. Okay, Cain built his house with a roof made of stone, and he ended up dying because the stone roof fell on him. You know what I mean? That's why, if you notice, people never build their houses with stone. They always use wood. Now, at least. But that's where all of that stems from. It's because people learned that far back that it's not a good idea to build your roof out of stone.
Well, it's not just about the roof. It's a metaphor for having a solid foundation in when you do something, and then it lasts longer. And I would liken that whole parable of like, committing a sin through thought is I look at it from like a neurological perspective, where even when you think about something that creates desire in you, you're really releasing little bits of dopamine, and that creates that strengthens the dopamine pathways in your brain, which actually creates a sense of craving. Okay, similar to when you take a drug, for example, and when you then stop thinking about these things, that craving is still there because those neurons have grown. Okay, and then over time, if you keep like doing it, those neurons just keep getting stronger. They keep wanting to fire, and then you create a habitual pathway in your system where you might lose control in certain circumstances. For example, similar thing happens to drug users, where it might start off as a simple having a smoke at a party, but over time, if you like sneak a smoke every now and then, all of a sudden it becomes a crutch, and you can't control the crutch, right? So I always say to people, your nervous system is like a garden, and you need to like maintain the garden, weed the garden, take care of the garden, and at the same time, your dopamine pathway is like a little pet animal. Like it wants to always be out of control. Like if you let the animal off the chain and it just keeps running away from you, it ends up getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and eventually you can't hold on to that chain to keep it under control anymore. So it's important to treat your ego or your dopamine pathway using your intellect as like a responsible dog owner or something like that, where you teach your dog manners, you teach your dog how to control itself, blah blah blah. And if it acts up, then you need to step in and like go, no, I'm stopping you from doing that for now, as like a do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, it made perfect sense for me.
Okay.
Go ahead, Otto. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying, yeah, sounds good to me. I'm actually texting with Bob a little bit here too, so I might get distracted with what's going on.
I was getting distracted too. She's actually got some good stuff too.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, V wanted to jump into triality, okay? But the thing of it was, I have to slow him down because there's something that's important that comes before that, and it's what I refer to as the third element. It's also called emergence. It's called recursion, complexity. You can call it a lot of things, okay? And this is basically where things get pretty interesting. Now, in philosophical systems, they teach us that when two forces interact, a third thing can emerge. Something that isn't just a blend, but like a new structured level or structural level, basically. A good example would be the Hegelian dialect, where you have thesis, antithesis, and synthesis.
Right.
Or you have Jungian psychology, which talks about integration, consciousness plus unconsciousness, and then you have individuation. If you want to take it down to chemistry, you look at frickin' water, okay? You have hydrogen plus oxygen, which makes water.
Right.
Okay. Now, this isn't hydrogen and oxygen doesn't frickin' blend together to make oxygen. It's just because of their close interactions with one another that produces the water. They don't ever blend. And that's the best example for the third element that I can come up with when it comes to all this, because it really does kind of explain the whole idea behind it. You can get caught up in the Hegelian dialect for years and years and get or Jungian psychology, but like hydrogen and oxygen creating water is probably the most simplest way of thinking of it.
Interestingly enough, me and Ria has been talking about Marxism recently, and the thing that comes to mind at this moment is dialectical materialism. The sort of theory that suggests that the material world exists objectively, but reality isn't static.
The word static always seems to be popping up quite a bit in a lot of the research that I've been doing. Like they're finding out that a lot of things aren't static. You know what I mean? Like a lot of things that people think are just freaking, carry on as usual, you know what I mean, isn't really. Just keep moving on. It's there's actually something different that's going on underneath that people aren't aware of. So the third element is what I was really wanting to get into, because like even like in information theory, any of you guys ever get into that with information theory?
A little bit, not too much.
A little bit. Also, I just wanted to say before we move on from Hegelian dialectic, I've only ever heard of it used in like political terms, where one group will create a problem which generates a reaction from the group so that they can provide a predetermined solution, right? Because the Hegelian dialectic is the principle or the proposition that there an idea or can generate or like the interaction of two ideas or the conflict of two ideas can generate which they call a thesis, can generate an antithesis, which is the opposite of that idea, and the tension between them leads to a higher level resolution, which they call the synthesis, right?
Mm-hmm.
So problem, reaction, solution, you know. That's all I wanted to say.
That's actually the thing that most people really do here and everything. And I mean, it's like if you wanna talk about thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, then we can talk about it. But that's basically what it comes down to. You know what I mean? And for me, I mentioned this before, but I think that naming it the Hegelian dialect was actually an injustice in itself, because it's kind of deceiving. You know what I mean? Because Hegel did sit down and write his findings out, okay? But these weren't stuff that he freaking thought of himself. Like, he just did the research and he found patterns that took place throughout history before him. And he put it together, you know. And I think there's a lot of people who really don't understand what he was getting at when he was actually writing that stuff. So I that's just my take on it.
I haven't actually read his original works. I'd like to. It sounds interesting.
I have met one person who read Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, and we did a talk on it. And one of his peeves about it was that the thing is, when he wrote the book, he basically connected the dots backwards and basically described all of history leading up to its pinnacle, which was him writing the book. And that's an aspect of Hegel to keep in mind. Definitely, he was working.
That makes sense. He clearly observed something in his own life, and then reverse engineered the principle out of it. You know, even me, like that's kind of how I explained things before. Was like, you know,
his basis was the idea that the school of German idealism was the height of all civilization. Kind of deal. And it all had to be worked out from that. So I think that's a debatable point, that particular point.
But still, the principle of the spirit evolving through the conflicts that occurs to the body or the existence,
right?
It's still like a timeless concept that everyone experiences.
It's an interesting model, and it's very useful to help us understand things sometimes. But again, as pointed out before, we can't take these things too seriously, or we get sucked into them.
Oh, that's right. That's right as well. Yeah.
Now, like with a thesis, it's just an initial idea. You know what I mean? And it generates an opposing antithesis, and their struggle is basically resolved by a new, what most people will call like a higher level synthesis, and it's supposed to incorporate elements of both, and it incorporates it. It's not blended in; it just incorporates it. You know what I mean? It becomes a new thesis. So
that's why we call it hypothesis in science, is because a thesis is just a proposition, or like an that we have an argument for. So it's not necessarily a fact or the truth. It's something that we want to test out. So anyway, you want to talk about information theory?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you want to, we can talk about information theory. Information theory, what a lot of people don't catch on to when it comes to this third element, is like meaningful data. Okay, after being processed. Okay, now if you take a look at that, when what makes meaningful data after it's being processed is signal and noise. Okay, now you hear that and you're like, whatever, dude, but it's true. You know what I mean? information theory goes off of the idea that signal plus noise creates meaningful data.
Just
Right.
remember also that everything is noise until you figure out what it means.
This gets to something Robert Anton Wilson pointed out, and I think we've talked about this a little before, Roger, about
Yeah.
how information is based on unpredictability. And I always use the example of the the poem, "Roses are red, violets are blue. You think this will rhyme, but it ain't gonna." You could predict that poem up to a point, but it became unpredictable. Suddenly you had new information. So information has to do with unpredictability. But if you have too much unpredictability, you simply have static, that word again, using it in a different sense, and it's completely unintelligible. It's just like blue, 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 blue.
Yeah,
That's
but here's the thing.
too
Here's the
much
thing. I think
unpredictability.
what you mean is useful information has to do with predictability or categorization, because when you can categorize information, then it becomes more useful. You can look things up, you can find patterns, all this kind of thing. Just because something is noise or unpredictable doesn't mean it's not information, or that it's not, you know.
But you only have so much of an ability to decipher it.
Like, for example, for years, scientists thought that most of our genome is made up of junk DNA, until very recently they found that actually there's actual information in this junk DNA, and it's just that we don't fully understand it yet. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, yeah, because you're getting into genetics, you're getting into epigenetics, and things that are going to come after that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, this gets even more interesting because the third element, or emergence, which a lot of people do use that term, also involves, which goes along with this, it involves recursion, and it also involves complexity. Now, when you get into the complexity, this is where people start talking about oh my goodness, I can't quantum computing, basically, you know. But complexity has a lot more to do with things more than just, you know, quantum computing, and recursion is also something that freaking people don't understand either. Like, I was talking to Mark before about waveform, okay? And when it comes to recursion, what they basically do is it solves problems by breaking them down into smaller, similar sub-problems until it has a base case. And that's basically the same thing that comes to freaking, what is it, the base frequency for algorithms, I believe. Mark, we had that conversation. That's what you remember.
I never got past algebra, so it's above my pay grade.
But that doesn't necessarily mean zero, okay? It just means that that's the lowest base number, base case.
Lowest moment, yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was something that really struck me as interesting whenever I got to that point, because
when you talk about complexity of information, it's also important to mention entropy. Entropy is normally associated with as a state of disorder within, or randomness within a system, or uncertainty. But in information theory, entropy is the average level of uncertainty or information associated with a variable's potential states or possible outcomes. It measures the expected amount of information needed to describe the state of a variable, considering the distribution of probabilities across all potential states. So it's how much information you need to figure out what something means. You know, they call that information entropy.
Well, see, this is where it's going to get interesting when I talk to Mike, because like he is really big on his findings that he did with unified quantum relativity curvature.
Also, we should just mention for the people listening, some of the most fundamental aspects of information, right? Is what type of information it is. Is it quantitative information, which is information you can measure, or is it qualitative information, which is subjective to your experience? Those are some of the most fundamental categories of information you get, and then in sort of computer science, at least that's where I know it from, is when you're dealing with information, there's the concept of normalizing information, which is basically taking in information in predefined categories. Or then there is finding relationships information and categorizing information based on that. And that's at least in computer science, how you develop databases, basically. And when you have information in sort of like a normalized or categorized fashion, it becomes much easier to make use of that information, find patterns, and so on. So.
Now, my question about entropy is this: is entropy disorder or is it information? Now, in UQRC, I just use the initials, they describe entropy as it becomes a guiding constraint. Okay, and that's something that Mike was talking about, and it's encoded into the fabric of space, basically.
What do you mean by guiding constraint?
It's a guiding constraint, basically, and it's encoded into the fabric of space. Okay. Now, matter and mind, they aren't opposed. They're a pattern, and they're also like a surprise. You know what I'm saying? So, I
always say to people, I don't believe in chaos, because chaos is made, but basically, from what I can gather, is an interpretation of a limited perspective. And once you have a broader understanding of the situation, you realize that there's patterns in the chaos, and the chaos only exists because of some type of fundamental order behind it. And if we're talking about order, we're not talking about chaos. We're just talking about misunderstanding of what there is.
So you want to talk about
chaos can also be when we don't have the right reality grid in place to interpret what we're experiencing. If you look at the form of the stock market, it looks chaotic as hell. But if you're a stockbroker, you understand exactly what's going on, and you don't see the chaos there at all. So,
exactly.
Is unpredictability. If you can give chances or predict something, then you have a fundamental understanding of what you're dealing with, and therefore there is underlying sense of order. Yes. Mm-hmm. There's a fundamental base to something.
That's why generating a true random number is so difficult, because everything is based on some kind of principle.
Okay, so now that we got this mindset, now we move on to triality. Okay, so you have to have this stuff in your head while we talk about triality, so that we have a really good conversation. And that's just my take. That's why I wanted to do it this way. And I've had amazing conversations with most of you already about this stuff, except for Mr. Robot and Mark Edward. He's still trying to catch up. He's
still got fountain pens. What are you talking about?
It's blowing his freaking mind, dude. Every time I look at him, he's just tripping out. He's like, "What the hell are these people talking about?"
Yeah, even though all my head just going to explode.
Yeah, well, you almost did, freaking before. I was so proud of you, dude. Your head came so close to blowing up. Triality basically is a step beyond both of the above things that we've talked about, duality and the third element. Okay,